All right, it is Friday, December 13, 2026, not December 13,
Right
February
on.
13.
Yeah,
Good start, right, John? So
exactly.
and so I am here today with Jonathan Leebosh, who is a just retired immigration lawyer from Vancouver, and a quite a few people once you retired said you have to have him on Borderlines. You have to have Jonathan on Borderlines. We actually want to hear what Jonathan has to say. And
Shocking. Shocking.
it was easy to reach out then.
Yeah.
Jonathan is probably best known, at least in Vancouver, for being the lead immigration person at EY Law. And I think it's safe to say, and this is probably what we'll talk about a bit, amongst other things, that you built EY into at least the biggest of the big four practices in Vancouver, and probably developed a niche as one of the premier corporate immigration lawyers in Vancouver, if not Canada. I don't know if you think that's a fair comment or.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
It's for
Um,
others to say, but that's. But I'm happy with what I've done in my career in that
yeah.
respect. Yeah.
Well, one of your, and I hadn't heard this term until some people, so this was part of it, was people were like, oh, you've got to have Jonathan Leebosh on. He's the only person in the immigration community who has a verb to his name. And I said, what's the verb? And they said, Leeboshed. And I said, what's it mean? What's Leeboshed? And they went, when you lose a client to Jonathan, it's getting Leeboshed, which I thought was
I've
pretty
heard that
funny.
before. Uh, um, one of the beautiful things about being in our immigration bar is that we are a really collegial, friendly
Hmm.
bunch. So friendly competitors. I mean, it's somewhat uncomfortable and awkward because I like the people who I compete with in business, and so. But I have heard that term, and it brings a little chuckle, I guess.
Yeah. So going back a bit, what got you into immigration law initially? Because I think you worked for, and you started in refugee law or no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I of course I didn't like start out my life wanting to be, an immigration lawyer from the very beginning. I ended up working for the UN High Commission for Refugees, and not even in the legal department. It was even before I went to law school. I was a field officer in Hong Kong. I was based in Hong Kong for 4 years, working with the Vietnamese boat people population there, and kind of responsible for one of the camps where um, the Vietnamese were housed by the Hong Kong
Hmm.
government. And so I'd done that for 3 or 4 years, and I decided, I was being asked by the UN to start going to much more uncomfortable places than living in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Um, and I speak French, so they wanted me to go. It was at the time of the issues in Rwanda, and so they wanted me
Oh,
to go
okay. Yeah.
there,
That's
and
much different.
very different, and all of that. And I kind of made a choice at that time that I didn't really want to make this my whole life around what I referred to at the time as misery management, which is a
Hmm.
little bit of what you're doing when you're going from refugee camp to refugee camp. So I thought of how can I get out of this thing, out of this cycle, and so I applied to from when I was living in Hong Kong. I applied to go to law school in Canada.
Okay.
In fact, I wrote a funny, quick little story. I had to write my LSAT, and yeah, they write this. You sit down and write them all at the same time. Of course, this is long before the time of online testing and all of that stuff. So you had to go to a testing center, and the testing center in Hong Kong was closed for Chinese New Year. So I had to fly to Bangkok to write my
Is
LSAT
this to get
test.
into North American schools? Like, do the
Yes,
Asian schools use, like
no,
people going to the
this is just
University of Hong Kong for law? Do they do the LSAT? No,
no,
right? Yeah.
no. So it was really for North American schools. So they had to send. So I flew to Bangkok. I took a riverboat up the Chao Phraya River to some
Wow.
American high school that was hosting the test, and there were like three other people there writing it, and um, kind of a fun way to write the LSAT, I guess. But it had to be at the exact same time as they were writing it in North America because they wanted to prevent people from cheating.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So it was a little it was a little weird. Anyway, so I went to law school, and then with the intention that I would go back into refugee work. Um, I articled in Toronto, and then with the famous Canadian immigration lawyer Mendel Green
Oh yeah.
and his family. And so I did that, and I articled the same time as other people you've had on your show, probably Chantal Deloge, and we were articling buddies, and Ravi Jain
Yeah.
um,
We haven't had
followed.
him on, but I
Yeah,
know he was at Green and Spiegel
that's right.
for a while.
So, and then I went into kind of refugee and quasi removals work, like criminal work, working for one more senior lawyer in Toronto. And I just got bombarded with all of the IRB refugee cases. I did dozens and dozens and dozens of them. He didn't want to do them anymore. He was sick and tired of it, and he got into criminal law. So I took over his refugee files, and then that's tiring. You
Hmm.
know, it's super tiring, and it's demanding. It was what I wanted to do at the time, but I got a little burnt out on it. So the opportunity came um, at EY. They were at that time a group of really just two lawyers and three or four support staff in a broader EY practice, EY law practice. And so they were just getting started. Of course, now the firm is about, in Canada, is about 500 people, including staff and lawyers. And
Were you one of the first person or people so with EY Law then?
one of the first in the immigration practice. Back
Yeah.
then, EY Law was a full service law firm. They did corporate law. They did all sorts of IP law, wills and estates. They got out of the full service side and kept the immigration and the tax practice, legal practice.
So while you were there, EY Law grew from like 2 to 500, you said.
I mean, including all the support staff and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, of course, of course.
How does that happen? Because I think that's the big, a lot of people were like, how did uh, the amount of questions specific to corporate law? How does he do this? How does he do this? So just broad sweep. Because I think you also moved, right? From Montreal, you're in Toronto, ultimately Vancouver.
Yeah, on the personal side, like I'm born in Montreal,
Hmm.
uh, but my family, my mom remarried, and we moved to Toronto when I was 10. So I kind of grew up in Toronto. In fact, I would say in some respects where my interest in immigrant and immigration started was because we moved into from Montreal into, a lot of people might know, Kensington Market area in Toronto,
Oh yeah,
which
by
was a very,
Chinatown.
yeah,
Uh,
right now, part of Chinatown, really. And so all immigrant kids, I was one of the very few kids that was kind of born in Canada, with parents born in Canada.
yeah.
And that was just, but I mean, it was a great experience, and I loved it. And but it's maybe that's where I got my interest in immigration and the mobility of people. And I did an undergrad degree in urban studies, but with a focus on, I wrote my graduating thesis on the Vietnamese population moving
Hmm.
into Toronto and their integration into the urban
That
landscape
was
in
before or
Toronto.
after then you did the
Yeah,
UNHCR role with the
no,
Vietnamese both
it was
people.
before. So, and
Oh,
then I
okay.
used that as a talking point in my interview with UNHCR as to why I'd be the perfect candidate for.
Oh, neat. Neat.
So that, I think that was my hook to get the job with the UN. Anyway, so look, I kind of, when I took the job with EY, I thought of it as a break from the hard work of
The
um,
IRB.
the IRB and the refugee stuff and the removals work that I was doing. I thought, oh, I'll take a break, um, a year or two, and then I'll get back into it in a different way. Because I also was at the beginning of my legal career. I didn't know how to find clients. I was getting all these clients because a more senior practitioner brought me on board, and he was
Hmm.
handing me all of that stuff. Um, and so, but it ended up that I liked the people I worked with. There was I liked the firm. I liked the culture. Um, there's there's a commitment to doing good work for our clients. Our founding partner of the immigration practice, James Egan, sometimes you hear our firm was referred to as Egan LLP before we rebranded as EY Law. He had been working at Faskins, which is now whichever of the big global firms. And so he had a big list of corporate clients. EY had a big list of corporate clients. So everyone always focuses on, sorry, my dog just barked. I hope you didn't hear that.
No, it's fine. Deanna's dog is often on the show.
um, we had a lot of very lucky in terms of building a corporate practice because we have obviously the EY network. We have our partners around the world that are constantly introducing us to new potential corporate clients. And of course, again, very lucky. We have a great brand. EY is a worldwide global brand, trusted, I would say, for doing very strong, reliable work in whatever field of professional services it touches on. So it's a door. It opens a door. So if I was very lucky that way, I kind of just right timing, right place, right people. I wanted to stay, and then I was in an environment where I just really had to, the business development side, how do you get clients, was more about developing relationships with others in my firm, whether they're in Canada or in the US or anywhere else in the world. So they knew if they had an immigration question for Canada, they could call me. And so I did a lot of like road shows. I went to Europe one time and I did like 4 country EY offices, and it just over time it kind of it builds on itself, and you start to develop that.
What brought you to Vancouver?
So at the
Is
time I
that
was in,
business or personal?
at the time I was in Toronto. That's right. I started with EY in 2000, and then in 2006, James Egan asked me to go to Calgary to
Yeah.
start up our Calgary immigration team. And I went, spent a year there. I had at the time a number of clients in the oil sector, oil and gas sector, and so it made sense. And then while I was there, I met up with Roxanne Israel, who a lot of people will know is our partner in Calgary, and I convinced her to come join the firm, which of course then allowed me to go back to Toronto. I really enjoyed my time in Calgary. I just didn't see it as a place where I wanted to settle for long term. And then I went back to Toronto, and then the firm asked me to kind of do the same thing again in Vancouver. Now, at that time, your partner Mira had already started with us in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But she was pretty new and a little bit more junior. And so there was still room for someone who was really familiar with the inner workings of our big practice and our big firm to come out here and help get things started. I also had some personal reasons here. I have a couple of kids here that I wanted to be closer to. And so the firm knew that. And so when they offered that to me, they kind of knew that I would probably say yes. So it worked out really well. That was in 2011. So 15 years ago. I still feel like if someone from Montreal steps up and says, I'm from Montreal, I say I'm from Montreal. If someone says I'm from Toronto, I say I'm from Toronto. I'm kind of like, I'll take anywhere, because I enjoy all these places.
Mira, actually, speaking of Mira, had the specific question was she wants to know who has the better food scene, Vancouver or Toronto? I don't know if there's an inside story to that, but she said if you're going to ask John anything, ask Vancouver or Toronto, the food
I
scene.
think because when Mira was working for us, we talked a lot about restaurants and where to eat, and all our local kind of places. And because she was here when I first moved here, she was my source for a lot of good ideas, like where to eat places in Vancouver. Which
She's
has a
still
better,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
She likes to explore. I think there's way more variety in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
but what Vancouver does well, I think, does better than Toronto. So,
Interesting. In
um,
which areas?
so
Sushi or
like obviously Asian cuisines.
yeah.
Like there's just like Vancouver is just can't be beat. Asian cuisines of all of them, frankly.
Yeah.
um, and then, but in terms of variety, I think in Toronto you get a lot more Latino cuisine. You got more African restaurants. There's a greater breadth of continental restaurants, and I think the vibe is there's just such different vibes to both cities. It's you can't really compare them. I'm always very sensitive because Vancouverites
There
can
is a
be.
bit of an insecurity I find.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Like the
yes,
way I described it was like in Vancouver, when people say you're from Toronto, everyone's like, "Oh, Toronto." And when you're in Toronto and you say you're from Vancouver, they're all like, "Oh, what a nice city."
yeah, yeah.
It's a very weird, yeah,
It is. That's exactly right. I say the same thing. It doesn't need to be. I think Vancouver has so much
yeah.
to be proud of and to feel good about. So that doesn't need to be that way, but I do find there is a bit of that.
The other question Mira had that's a bit more substantive was she wanted your thoughts on managing people. She says, lawyers aren't trained to do this, but are forced to do it. And I guess you would have, going from 2 to 500, would have really had to like take a crash course on managing people.
And to be clear, I've never been the person in charge of the entire firm
Hmm.
of 500 people, but just the Vancouver office alone, um, it's probably the most tiring thing
Yeah.
of running a larger practice. I do less. I was doing less and less actual lawyering. Um, it kind of gets awkward because I don't I don't know how to actually at a certain point, like I have a big team here and I had a big team here in Vancouver, and I didn't know how to submit an application anymore. I know the strategy. I can
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
through the law and all that stuff, but I just
Did you
couldn't.
miss it or did it just as as your role evolved?
Yeah,
Um,
it's a little bit as the role evolved because I just didn't have time, and also in our structure, I became more of a relationship partner. So owning the
mhm.
relationship and making sure our corporate clients are happy and they're getting what they need, or dealing with an escalation that does happen. Obviously, things don't go as planned. Um, but the day to day, we had other lawyers and paralegals and law clerks um, and consultants who could do the day to day. So, you know, don't ask me how to upload an application.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's and it would be difficult because sometimes you get these emergency calls on a Saturday or something like that, and there's someone who just needs immediate. So I'm calling around to all my colleagues to step in on that stuff. So your question was about managing people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
sorry, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Hardest thing, it's the hardest thing of running the practice, um, is we are a people business,
Hmm.
at least for now, until the bots once and for all take over.
Yeah.
um, we are a people business, and making sure that our team is engaged, has the right skill set, understands how to work with clients. The easiest thing in some respects, is learning the technical skills.
Hmm.
In some respects, that's the easiest thing because we're all, for the most part, lawyers are smart people, and we can learn the skills and the techniques, the technical side of things, the legal technical side of things. But the client service side, and managing and understanding what clients are really looking for, that's really the hardest part. And so in terms of managing people, yeah, you have all your HR issues and all of that stuff, which is not fun at all. But the biggest element of managing people is, I would say, is mentoring and understanding that we have really in law, we have an apprentice model,
Hmm.
and we are always trying to um, ensure that the next generation of clerks and lawyers are ready and able to grow and take over the practice.
Do you think for a corporate practice, there's a minimum size that a firm needs to be?
I don't know if it's no, not it's not so much of size. I think there's probably a level of sophistication that is necessary. Um, that is hard to replicate if you're just a solo practitioner. Not impossible,
Mhm.
but hard to replicate. Um, if you're a solo practitioner, or you're not going to have clients that have thousands of employees and dozens of applications a year, but you can still do a corporate practice um, for smaller businesses. But you still need to have a level of sophistication and really understand your client, what your client is trying to achieve when they're calling you. I think the biggest challenge for young lawyers that I see is, um, in some respects, they just are so focused on the legal element. They're not of what they're being asked to do. They're not being responsive to what the client actually needs. They're
Yeah.
not
Can you give an
listening.
example? Because I think some people might not, they might be able to conceptualize it, but not put what it actually means.
Um, I mean, I just think the issue is I can't think of a real life example off the top of my head, but I think the point is that oftentimes you might just be dealing with an administrative assistant or a fractional HR manager, who's helping a big company or something like, or a medium sized company. And look, they've been told that this person needs to start in Canada on March 1st. And that's all they care about, really. Obviously, they want it to happen legally and lawfully. Um, but so think of, like, you just have to work backwards from that and work with your client. They
Hmm.
don't care that the strategy is a C12 versus a T24 versus a this, and the whole long explanation as to why this. Generally speaking, they don't care. They just, like, they're being told by their boss, get me this person to start on March 1st.
Yeah. They don't care about which exemption code, and they
Right,
don't need an explanation as to all the different exemption codes.
right. So you
They
got to
just
find
want the person in.
That's it. And so
Yeah.
you got to understand what your client's looking for. Now, you can't be professionally irresponsible. They still, they are still the client. They still need to make an informed decision, but you definitely need to start with what are they trying to achieve? And you start with a recommendation. This is how you can achieve that, in my opinion, with my experience, the best, most time efficient, cost efficient manner.
Yeah. And
Um,
one of the other things that, from what I understand, and this is what one of your former colleagues said, was beyond the practice of law, you helped create LMIA, LMO group of companies options. And knowing, we won't name them, I don't know if it's public record or not, but some of EY's clients, other LMIA exemptions, did that just stem from the role that you got into? Would you call it lobbying, or what would you?
I had to
It's a very
register.
interesting part of your
Yeah,
practice or career.
yeah. I mean, I've part of it is that I love, like, going back to why immigration. I love the intersection of politics. I love following politics, although these days it makes my head go crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I love politics and I love people. And immigration seems to be a good intersection of how the political and the personal
Hmm.
really come together. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy. So when I can get involved in some new policy development or speaking on policy issues, it's right up my alley. I love it. It's really exciting to me. So, obviously, I've been lucky enough at my firm to have um, clients that are willing to willing and to hear some of my ideas and to help solve their problems. The group of companies that was, I think referred to as, again, probably in around 2006, 2007 in the oil field. It wasn't an LMIA exemption, but it was the first concept. And it was just through an idea that the client approached me and said, look, we're about to embark on this huge project. We're going to have dozens of contractors and subcontractors, and they're all going to need the same talent. There isn't enough talent in Alberta or Canada to fill the need, and we own the project. We can't afford to let it deadlines pass just because of all this talent issue. What can you, like, is there anything we can think of? And we brainstormed some ideas, and so I approached ESDC or whatever it was at the time, HRSDC, who knows, I can't remember back then, and they were very receptive. And the whole concept, and we just kind of hammered through the idea of a group of companies. So, like, under the sponsorship of what the project owner, but if you were registered as a contractor in the group of companies, then the work permit would be issued for the group of companies, and then you could have mobility within the companies that are in that. So each company wouldn't have to go out and get a new work permit or a new LMIA or LMO at the time. And so there's a lot of efficiency for everyone involved. And this is just kind of creative brainstorming. I did have to register as a lobbyist. I did.
What do you think it was that, like, because people write to them all the time, I'm sure, saying, you should do this, you should do this. What do you think it was that, like, you got through?
It helps to have a client that has a recognized brand. So you can see, this is public knowledge. You can see, and this isn't the group of companies, but it's the other annex exemption that exists for Lululemon and Microsoft. Those are recognized brands. It helps. Like, it's not the be all and end all, but getting on a call and saying, you're from this company, everyone knows that company. So there's some legitimacy right away. I wouldn't ever suggest that decisions were made favorably just because of that brand. Not at all. I can tell you, I've been on those. There's a lot of time and effort and work, flying to Ottawa, flying to Victoria, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Those things are not easy, but it captures the ear. And it also helps, I would say, that at least for both Lululemon and Microsoft, and I can't say that I represented both of those or either of those, but they're in sectors that, that were priorities for both the BC and the Canadian government, right?
Yeah.
So IT, software development in Vancouver has always been a focus for both governments. And Lululemon's a global brand, and Vancouver increasingly with Arc'teryx, with Lulu, with Aritzia, is a global center as well. So that also helps. Is it a priority sector, I would say.
Yeah. So I'm glad, we can't, without mentioning the specifics, at least now the scale of some of these companies. This week, 2 consultants and 1 lawyer asked, how do I transition from representing individuals to my dream is to represent companies as large as, say, some of the examples you just gave? And I said, oh, you'll have to watch the episode that we're doing with Jonathan Leebosh. So if that question came to you, that they want to transition to, and they were specifically being both the approach, and I think you've said, recognizing more what the companies are looking at, but in terms of, like, is there stuff that they should be doing in terms of streamline their own process beforehand? Or is it networking?
Well, so I think there's a number of things. Look, I said I networked internally within my firm. I also networked externally outside of the firm. I think, you have to be active in local industry associations, offer to speak on issues and topics. And you have to find, it's really difficult because you have to find the right level to speak at those things. No one really wants to come and listen to someone talk about how they did another C12 and again, that's your specialty. It's not what the HR representatives or the talent acquisition people are super interested in. But anyway, so stay connect, network through industry associations, network within our immigration bar or amongst consultants, as the case may be. See what others are doing, and then, as I said, you have to have a certain level of sophistication in terms of technology and platforms and how
The
you
ability to meet client demands is also, I think,
right.
I think as clients get bigger and more sophisticated, like key performance indicators, things like that,
Good
that you
call.
might not be familiar with at an individual level.
Yeah, totally good call. Every one of our clients has service level agreements, and for the most part, in our contract agreement, responding to emails within X number of hours. Each client has different expectations around that, days or hours.
Hopefully none of your clients are listening going, what hours? We got to like, and you're like, I'm retired now. That's
exactly
a problem.
exactly. And like it might be like, let's say 2 business days or something for regular emails, but you have to respond to escalations within 4 hours, right? Because or have be available 24/7 for someone who's stuck at the border or there's all sorts of things. You just have to have those conversations with your clients. What's important to them, and then go from there.
Yeah, and then EY also does US and Canadian.
Oh yeah,
Right?
and that's a good call out. Look, when I said our the number of the size of our firm, it includes our U.S. immigration practitioners too. We do a lot of U.S. immigration law based out of Canada, so we have a big U.S. immigration team in all of our 4 or 5 offices in Canada, and we service. There's no real connection to Canada.
Yeah,
it's just we're in Canada, but they're all in the U.S. and we service them. We were able to service them from here.
yeah.
Obviously, increasingly you don't need to be there in person.
So like when people would often ask, oh, Steve, what's it like practicing at the Big Four in immigration? I would first say, well, I don't know. I've never practiced at one of the Big Four. But I would generally say that in Vancouver, I want to be careful in how I word this. It seemed like EY was bigger or more noticeable than any of the other Big Four. And in
Which is
theory, they would all be the same sophistication. I don't know accounting wise what the difference is between the different brands.
yeah.
But so what was it that that EY grew more in Vancouver, it seems, than the
I
other?
don't know. Like, first of all, I can't really. I've only ever practiced at EY, so
Yeah.
I can't speak to the other Big Four of the Big Four accounting firms, and PwC doesn't have an immigration practice anymore. They sold it off to become Vialto. So
I don't think KPMG has anyone here.
I think
I
they.
could be
Well,
wrong.
I think they do.
On the Canadian side or the American?
On the Canadian side, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, how did we get? We're a very national practice, so you can work in our Vancouver office. It will be the same as working in our Toronto office, and our teams or Calgary office or whatever. Our teams are actually, for our larger clients, we're across all of our offices. So
Yeah.
we might have some really large clients that have a team of whatever number, let's say 12 people working on it. But 3 might be in Toronto, 2 might be in Vancouver. And so our systems are all meant to work across the country. We don't have any lone wolves, really. if I'm, if I have one clerk working on a file and they're on vacation, anyone should be able to pick up the file and go with it because we have our systems in place. And that's what you have to do when you get to
Yeah, yeah.
this kind of
Do you
size. But I'm sure it's not a necessity to do corporate law to have all that level of sophistication. That's our sheer size that makes us
yeah.
do.
Do you think it has to do with the Leebosh verb, like that, the amount of networking that you did to grow it?
Our clients are from everywhere.
Yeah.
Honestly, the
Like the two
people.
LMIA exemptions that you mentioned, for example, is it a coincidence that like they're in Vancouver? I don't think there are any like LMIA exemptions that are company specific outside of BC.
Well,
Well, they've got now the 8 growth thing, but like until the
there are not, to the best of my
yeah,
knowledge, and I don't think it's related. No, I would love to take credit for it. Look, you know, um, I would say the biggest reason why those are here in BC is because one, the BC Canada immigration agreement
mhm,
had language around it. Not all of them used to. I don't, but they're constantly updating. I think they've started to use them in other provincial agreements. But BC was kind of unique at the time in having that language that allowed for the significant investment exemption. And uh, I'll tell you a story quickly. Sorry, the other part of it is that the BC government, I have to say, I mean, I've worked with, in all provinces. I've had clients in all provinces. By far, the BC government is the most focused.
yeah,
I think they're the most interested in being innovative, and as compared to any of the other provinces, by far, BC government's much more willing to pick up the
under
phone.
both Liberal and NDP.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
definitely. Actually, once upon a time, I went on a trip with Christy Clark and not the whole BC contingent. It wasn't just
Yeah,
me
yeah.
and Christy, but we went to China, Japan, Korea, and did a tour. And it was kind of myself from the immigration practice and someone else from our tax practice. Um, and so, to your point, I mean, it was under the liberal. That was under the liberal government.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think it's inherent in the way BC works.
Last question or topic, I guess, inspired by one of your former colleagues, before we get into maybe where you think immigration is going. Um, well, I'll just read the email and I'll read the first sentence and then we'll see if it works before the second. You may want to ask Jonathan whether any clients were more exciting than others, slash any clients aligned with his hobbies.
I know. I can guess who that's come from. Uh, I uh, I have I mean, a couple things. I mean, two things that I really love. Um, One is baseball. I've never had really like a baseball team as a client.
Yeah, that was someone else that he loves, the Montreal Expos, but not football.
That's right, exactly. I'd much rather, rest in peace for the Expos, but
Mhm.
I've long ago jumped on the Blue Jays bandwagon and followed them quite a
I
bit.
thought they might make it when the Jets returned. I thought the Expos might be next, but
I think Montreal is lacking. It takes too much money and
yeah.
I don't know if Montreal has the money.
Mhm.
Um, um, the Vancouver Canadians are fun to watch here in
Yeah,
Vancouver,
yeah.
and they're the farm team for the Jays. The other one is I love. I guess I've never grown out of this. I love airplanes.
There you go. That's what he
Yeah,
said.
I knew that was the other one. I love airplanes. I know a ton about aviation. I am not technical at all. Like I am. There's no way I could ever work in the
Yeah.
in the field, but I love aviation, and I have been lucky enough to have a number of aviation related clients over the years and go visit airplane manufacturing facilities and geek out that way. So that was super exciting.
Let's
And
see if this one's accurate also. Your favorite song to sing?
my
It was funny when I asked your colleagues
is
the
this
first time,
a I
favorite song to sing.
I have been known to say, I don't know if it's actually true. I don't know what my favorite song to sing is, but we used to do karaoke Thursdays in the office,
Yeah,
and I'd get dragged in to do that. And I would always do a Bee Gees song.
yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. Staying Alive by the
Yeah,
Bee Gees.
yeah, exactly. Because I have a terrible voice, but you can always with that falsetto kind of high pitched thumb, yeah, you can always squeak something out and
Right there you go.
everyone's on.
Your colleagues know you well. The genuineness of the relations, like a spousal interview.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, no, the team here has been great. I like one of obviously the joy. What I miss, people ask me because I actually went into the office yesterday for the first time to say hello, and I don't actually really miss the work that much. It has only been 6 weeks, but I don't miss it. Um, I miss the people that I worked with, the colleagues, my clients.
Yeah.
I over the years developed great friendships with clients, um, and it's those will last, they'll endure, but it's not, you don't see them on the daily anymore, which is the part I miss.
Your clients probably, I mean, we've seen in the news that companies are pretty annoyed with the current state of obtaining permanent residents, big or small. What are your thoughts on where this is, where it's all going?
Well, I mean, I do think,
And then with some of your, I mean, we'll do this one first, but the difficulty to obtain permanent residence.
yeah. I'll keep it to the Canadian world for
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
um, because what goes on in I'll just say that what goes on in the U.S. and the rest of the world could have ultimately be very impactful on policy in Canada.
Hmm.
Um, but for now, I would say that I still think it will continue to be more difficult before it gets better. But we're going through that period of difficulty right now for the next couple of years. You know this. I mean, I think in my like they need to get rid of the huge number. I don't mean it in a nasty way, but just purely from a data point. They need to there's just way too many people who came in as students, who
Hmm.
are on work permits, who are expecting to become PRs, and that it's like I think of it as like watching a snake digest a huge rat. You can see it going through the system,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it needs to come out the other end, one way or the other. And then, I think it'll be expectations will be adjusted at that point. So I do think that we're still kind of in that period of time, but
Hmm.
it will get better.
How's it impacting your clients? This was actually a question that people were saying, like companies as large, because I think some people wonder, do the companies as large escape what's going on? But like, not really. It's the same test.
It's
So
the
like,
same story.
how are they dealing with it? I think it's being more vocal in the news now that like
Yeah.
companies are getting pretty annoyed.
Um, they're just dealing with, there's no difference.
Yeah.
There's no difference. They call and they're kind of exasperated and they think, why are we paying you all this money to tell us that you can't solve a problem? I'm like, sorry, this is, I'm here to help you through the legal system,
Yeah.
but it's still the law. I can't, that's that. There's not much we can do about it. I think it depends on the industry and the sector too, right? Like the technology sector is, yeah, they're just not gonna. They don't need to. They'll
They're
readjust
not
how they
STEM
work.
anymore. They're not even in a STEM category, the
Yeah,
technology sector,
right.
right?
Exactly. And then there's a bunch of like the mining sector. Well, you kind of have to be on site with the mining sector. So um, they're hoping to be, and again, I haven't followed it in the last couple of months, but they're hoping to be a priority sector because it's strategic for Canada, so that maybe that their people will get picked up. But I had one client that just, you know, um, they would hire a ton of people out of university as young engineers, and they didn't. if they had a 3-year work permit, that's great. And they just took the policy that they wouldn't support them in any active PR process. If they could get it on their own, go
Hmm.
for it. But they were just not going to get into that game. And it gets difficult because in some provinces you can pretty much, as a a postgraduate work permit holder, you can pretty much go through the PNP process on your own with very minimal involvement of the employer, but still some involvement of the
Yeah, and they
employer,
wouldn't do it.
and they still wouldn't do it.
Wow, even for
It's like
PMP.
we have too many. We have too many in that category that it's just not something that we want to do from a policy perspective.
Hmm.
And you're talking to people like they're like the HR manager that I'm dealing with. They're not unsympathetic at all. It's very challenging and difficult, but it's just too big, a population that have come through that whole postgraduate work permit and looking to settle. I think the biggest issue was that somehow along the line over the years, the messaging from the government just got completely screwed up. And it was like, come as a student and be a permanent resident. Where did
Yeah,
that come from? Like, where was that? How did that commitment ever make
and
sense?
even if it made sense, it was then and will quintuple the amount of students,
Right, exactly.
or they lost control. I'm still not clear, like if it was that they lost control or if it was deliberate. But I don't know if you have any insight from, because they had one press release when they broadened the francophone program. The press release said they were trying to grow the GDP through population growth, and I went, "Oh, this will end well." But
Yeah.
like but then they also presented like that they just lost control.
I mean, yeah, they lost control, and there was a lot of lobbying from the education sector,
Mhm.
not the mainstream, maybe even the mainstream universities, but a lot of the smaller um, schools and institutions and private colleges. There was a
Yeah,
ton of lobbying because it was a profit making venture for sure.
yeah.
And we all know this. As once provincial governments are cutting education funding, and so they go in search of other sources,
Mhm.
international student fees.
Now,
And
the other area you talked about, the intersection of politics in the growing role of national security, relations with China, no relations with Iran, uh, and the impact that that's having on getting work permits and PR. Our last episode, we did a mini episode yesterday because I got through ATIP these stats, which say
oh,
that if your file's sent for comprehensive screening based on current backlogs as of November, it's 6 years for PR and about 3.5 for work permits. Um, certain nationality, we've joked that being Chinese and doing STEM is now a security concern. Where do you see all this going?
well,
Like, there's the Great Reset that Carney's talked about.
yeah.
Do you see that easing up?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think um, national security can't just disappear as a concern.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, I know from my experience with my clients, in particular the tech sector, there's that whole list of universities,
Hmm.
and there's about 115 universities. About 100 of them are Chinese, and the rest are between Iran and I think
Russia.
Russia. Yeah, um, and sensitive sectors or subsectors, and you know what I've said to my clients is if they're on a combination of those, then you're almost as good as sure for even a work permit being delayed, for a substantial amount of time. Um, and I don't think that's going to go away. I think companies will start to not hire or not seek to transfer those people to Canada. I've had multinational company clients that say, okay, fine. Well, we won't hire them in Canada. We'll send them to Australia or the UK. I'm like, there's something called the Five Eyes.
Hmm.
And and they share all this information. And that list that Canada has produced, not specifically in relation to immigration, but it's the same list for other countries as well. So I think I don't think that issue is going to go away anytime soon.
You don't think Mark Carney's reproachment that it will be, I mean, I have no idea if he is at that level that this stuff gets raised. But
I
I know
don't
some individuals have, at least in that community, have said, okay, well, maybe this is going to ease up now as
maybe.
part of the reproachment.
I think that'll be one of the back end. If it is, it won't be immediate.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think, you know, one person's personal opinion on the world of politics. I think Carney has to try and keep China not upset and manage the Trump administration as
Hmm.
best as possible. And I think he's going to try and play, both sides as
Thread the
much as
needle.
possible. Thread the
Yeah.
needle, which of course is impossible with given the unpredictability of the Trump administration. But I think he's going to try that. So I don't think it's tomorrow you're going to see all of a sudden all this national security disappear.
Yeah. Speaking of the US, so Jason Kenney, when he was on the show, said that the biggest thing that he sees is a huge influx of refugees during the Trump administration. Hasn't really happened yet. Do you see it? I mean, things seem to like gradually, it's hard to really tell actually what's going on. Yeah, but do
I
you see it?
I don't. There's been a lot of predictions of that, and there's been a lot of predictions of even the people in Canada who are running out of status just staying and working underground. I mean, we haven't really seen that data.
No,
Um,
well, yeah, there's no data on it.
there's no data on it. There's a lot of, I guess, doomsday predictions. I don't, I don't know. I don't think that's. I don't see a huge influx into Canada of refugee claimants, except for maybe American citizens who want to claim Canada as a
Yeah,
place
they're
of
all trying to
refuge.
dig up their Quebec birth certificates from
Oh,
1763.
exactly. I mean, you and I were talking about that separately, but so many of those calls. My mom is American and lives in the States, and all of her friends, I probably once every couple of weeks, I get a call from one of her girlfriends who has some tie to Canada and just wants to be their Canadian passport as a safety valve.
Yeah.
So,
We're coming up on the hour. This has been fun. Any final thoughts? Any final like message to the young lawyer or consultant?
um, no, I mean, look, I was people want to know how to, they want the silver,
A lot of
the
people who are retiring say it became less fun. Do you think the same? I mean, one of the things
yeah,
we didn't get into, but I can't remember if which of your colleagues said the old days versus what it's like now.
yeah. I mean, yeah, a couple things. Why was I ready to retire now? I mean, aside from the fact that I've hit the age of
I was gonna
retirement.
say you, yeah, had to.
Yeah. So aside from that, but I was ready for it too.
Yeah,
First of all, it is. I'll just say I love my firm. I love the people at my firm, but EY is a big bureaucracy, right? We're 350,000 people around the world. Um, it's a big bureaucracy. So that it's just working within that gets a
and you were
little bit.
doing a lot of travel, right? Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, a fair bit, a fair bit.
yeah,
Um, so there's a little bit of that, but there's also just the last. We used to be able to call people up and work through issues, and people would pick up the phone. Um, I remember, I used to call the consulate in Buffalo and say, "Oh, I got this guy. It's a real difficult situation." Um, I remember doing that once and just driving down with my client and visiting the visa officer in Buffalo. And
hmm,
again, not that I got any special favors. I don't think I just knew the numbers to call, and they picked up, and they would listen. And so those things don't happen anymore. It's
yeah.
impossible. And that's not as much fun anymore. That's for sure. and the system is all online and it's heartless in many ways.
Oh,
You
it's yeah.
you know, like they make a mistake and they don't care. You make a mistake and they really don't care. And we are all human. Everyone makes mistakes, including lawyers and consultants. And there's just no out. It's just not fun. It's just too, it's not as enjoyable anymore. Still
Yeah.
love getting a client the success that they're looking for. That's super enjoyable and lots of fun. And I share the joy with our clients.
Yeah. No, I thought that like when they introduced R10 that they would bounce applications for minor incompleteness. It added a new level to representing people that
Yeah.
on the other end, I'm not quite convinced what it achieves. But yeah, it's
I still think I'll just make this last pitch. I'll do it one last time. Um, I know this is perhaps contrary to Canadian um, uh, sense of fairness, and perhaps it's a little elitist. But you know, the U.S. has this premium processing where you can get an application processed in 14 days. It's expensive. You pay like $2,500 or even more now for that. And I'm not suggesting that Canada would charge that amount, but it would give access perhaps unfairly. This is why the Canadian government has always shied away from it. But it would help deal with a lot of these issues that us as practitioners come across, and it could pay for itself easily. You could figure out a way so that you figure out the actual cost of running a
yeah.
separate unit and just charge it. You know, make it
I
pay
mean,
for
they
itself.
might. Mark Carney seems to be a fan of like when something's not working to create a whole new thing that like
Yeah,
certain groups can just go in. So we may actually see it.
I've been saying
It
that for
would
years.
be sort of fitting with the way the Carney
Yeah.
government approaches things. All right,
Okay.
this was awesome. I'm sure your colleagues, Mira, will all be listening, and everyone who joined live. Yeah, this was